Hello, today I'm going to talk about the Fujifilm XF 56mm f1.2 R. This is the original generation lens, so it's not the updated WR re-release. I got this lens secondhand from a friend, and I'm going to share some example photos from one single photo walk that I did recently, and I'll share my impressions of this. So first of all, maybe we start with the ergonomics and the size of the lens. I'm going to try and give you some examples. I generally like to have UV filters on my lenses. Sue me. So I'm going to take that off. 62mm filter thread. So yeah, this is definitely one of the chunkier lenses that I have in my lens collection, but I think that it pairs very well with the Fujifilm body that I have, which is the X-T4. All right, now the moment of truth. Can I put this together on camera? Yeah, there we go. There we go, that's it. So this is what it looks like in terms of size. I think it fits quite well. I can definitely feel the heft and the weight of it, but it feels quite well. Now this is a second-hand copy, but in terms of the focus ring, it's very smooth, very well dampened, obviously focused by wire, but for me it works well. There are no switches on the lens, just the focus ring and then the aperture ring, which for my taste is a little bit light. I feel that it could do with more resistance, but I don't know if that's something to do with my copy or if it's with this lens model in general. It definitely helps that the X-T4 has quite a pronounced grip compared to other Fujifilm bodies. Now, I like to shoot street scenes, and specifically I don't like street photography in the sense of photographing people on the street. That's not my subject. I just like urban landscapes, I guess is what you would call it, or urban detail. Not necessarily architectural photography either, but somewhere in between. I'm definitely like not planning my shots. It's all about kind of like walking, kind of browsing, and then when inspiration hits, when intuition calls, then that's when I take the shot, and these are the shots that you're going to see. So all the photos that you're seeing now, I shot one evening in Paris. I shot JPEG, straight out of camera JPEG. I do have some kind of recipes, and I do make use of the film simulations that are available on the good old Fuji X-T4. So that means primarily classic negative. That is my favorite. This first shot, actually I don't think this first shot is classic neg. Yeah, it might just be Provia, to be fair. I think I had just taken the camera out. I was in Paris in the 11th district, and this is basically a corner bar, corner cafe that was closed. But I really like the orange color of that awning and the greenery above, so I took that shot. Next to that, actually, I just had to literally swivel. There was this hardware store, paint and hardware store, that had some really cool wall art and graphic design. I was kind of like starting to take shots, and I wasn't even sure if I had set up my camera properly. There's a corner bistro, kind of very iconic, very Paris. And then the next shot, there's some wall art. I believe that this was in Rue Amelot. It just it screams Paris, and you have like some bikes there at the bottom. Just the scale of it, and just the reach of the 56mm, which allows you to really kind of close in on the subject, really helps sort of take that scene out of context, and therefore the scale is kind of not what you expect. So I kind of like that. A Paris street, we're moving on here. This might have been just with Provia, to be fair. I think I was switching between just like my, default profile, which which is just Provia. Some more Paris rooftops there, very identifiable as Paris. And you've got that golden hour kind of coming in now. This one of this Parisian building corner, I shot at f2.8. ISO 160, so base ISO, but f2.8. So I used to live in this area in the early 2000s, so that's why I was walking there recently. I was really interested to see what had changed since I had last been there, so that was like more than 20 years ago. And this little kind of doorway restaurant, Italian restaurant almost, with this lovely painted doorway, is the same. I think maybe it had just opened when I was living in that area. Just the classic Paris bar, not the touristy stuff. This is just your day-to-day bar where you can go and get a coffee or maybe get a drink after work. Now this is a bit more touristy, but here you can kind of get to see the depth of field bokeh. So this one is a f1.4, so we're almost fully wide open. We see like the sun starting to fade on this Parisian facade. So yeah, the 11th and 20th districts I knew very well, and basically I was walking from Rue Oberkampf all the way up into the 20th district. So that was my route, and that's kind of what we're following now. This bar, Quartier Général, has been around in Paris. It was there when I lived there, so it was cool to see that it was still there, still the same lettering, the same colors, no rebranding necessary. It's a music bar, so you see some posters of upcoming concerts there, which is very cool. Actually, I took this photo because I recognized the headliner of this in the central poster there of the photo. Then some street art there. Love always wins. Love and war duking it out. A sort of video game screen. The colors are very punchy. This is definitely, I can see from the green kind of going towards the blue and the red going towards the orange. This is definitely classic negative. This is kind of like a building doorway, because most of these buildings in this part of Paris were designed back when horse-ridden carriages were still very common, and also just horse-ridden transport. So you have these doorways to allow horses and carriages to go through into an inner courtyard. Getting closer towards my old neighborhood, you can see that the buildings kind of get a little bit less fancy and that the streets narrow. The sun is setting further. Things are a little bit more gritty. But also, I took this shot with the HDR mode, which basically means that it takes a 3-shot burst, one that's overexposed, one that's at like 0 exposure or whatever exposure you've set, and then one that's underexposed, and then it kind of fuses them together into one shot. But since there are 3 distinct shots, it means that if there's movement, then there's going to be some weirdness. And you can kind of see that with the people in the foreground where they're kind of shadowy. But I actually kind of like this effect because the people aren't the subject here. So in a way, it de-emphasizes them even further, which works for my purposes because I'm really interested more in the buildings. Also, these images I shot at medium resolution, so it's not even the full resolution. They've kind of been sized down a little bit because I don't need the full resolution that's available. This shot actually I'm including because I kind of messed up, and this kind of goes to the focus topic. The area that's in the focus plane is actually pretty narrow. I focused rather well on that traffic light there in the middle of the photo, but then the buildings in the background are slightly blurred out, which is a bit frustrating. Yeah, it kind of goes to show that you can really play with this kind of sense of depth or add a sort of certain 3D-ness to your photos. I love this next shot of this mysterious but colorful building. Fantastic shot for me. This is a bookstore. It's called Le Mont en l'Air, and it opened also back in the early 2000s when I was living in the area. So I'm really pleased to see that it's still open, still going strong. I know they do like events and readings and concerts, so I'm just really glad that it's still a fixture of the neighborhood. Some wall art, a little refrain from a song about this part of Paris. It's been there for ages, since 1995. Neighborhood bar called l'Entrepote, which is a sort of play on words, but it's like, in English it would be like bar between friends. That's kind of what it translates as. And I had a really nice dinner there, actually. And this is a sort of, I thought it was an abandoned building back when I lived there, but I think it's kind of been refurbished. Clearly, way back when, it was a fancy residence, as you can see from that doorway. So I was taking these pictures, and actually someone, I will say this, someone stopped me on the street. First time it's happened that someone stopped me on the street while I was taking pictures. I was clearly taking pictures of a building, but I think that because this lens is kind of imposing, the person who stopped me actually thought that I was taking a picture of them, which was not the case. They were like, "Did you just take a picture of me?" And I was like, "No." And then he said, "Can I see?" And I was like, "Sure." I wish I could have told him I really don't like taking pictures of people, so I don't know what gave you the idea that I was taking a picture of you. Another fixture of the neighborhood, which I'm happy to say that after 20 years, still going strong, although clearly they haven't really spruced up their signage. It's the neighborhood laundromat, which is called Lave Club, which in British English sounds a little bit weird, but it's laverie, it's kind of abbreviated, and it means laundromat. It's kind of funny to see that many of the businesses along my walk had changed, except for the bars. That one restaurant that I mentioned earlier, the Italian kind of doorway restaurant, but that was really the exception to the rule, because most restaurants had changed hands, were serving different kinds of food, were clearly under different ownership. But what stayed true is the laundromat, the bar. But yeah, as you can see with these shots, being able to shoot at f1.2 is the killer feature, and the fact that even though occasionally the autofocus can be a little bit hesitant, but I think I found that more with portrait photography, but with these kind of cityscapes it was mostly fine. It acquired focus without any issue, as long as I was pointing, as long as the focus spot was in the right where I wanted it to be, because obviously if it was like on a light pole that was closer to me, then it was throwing off maybe what I intended to be the subject into background blur, which was not my intention. But except for that one shot where that happened, the camera really delivered above and beyond in terms of image quality, and we can see that there. Then here's the view down towards Paris at dusk, and then I took several shots at this point of this glorious view. And yeah, so I will say that very pleased with this lens. I can see why it's hyped, and I would say that it earns its hype because it does deliver in terms of low light performance, in terms of a sort of bokeh quality and construction. It's like, this is metal, this is also metal. Wow, yeah, maybe almost all metal as far as I can tell. That's really cool. Obviously metal mount, but yeah, but not weather sealed. One thing to be aware of. I think the new version is weather sealed. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you enjoyed the video. Until next time, take care.